Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yachting International Radio. You're with Karine, Rayson from the Crew Coach. And today I have the most wonderful guests who have also presented in my membership, Poppy and Jeff. So lovely to have you here.
Great to be with you.
Thank you, Karine. It's always so wonderful and brilliant to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Before we begin, can you give us a bit of background in terms of the service offerings that you have, as well as your professional accreditation and background?
So I'll start that I taught psychology at the college university level for 10 years, and I'm a registered art therapist working with people to extract emotions and issues via the art making process. And we're also both certified coaches, family law mediators, and
I'm also certified in conflict resolution, the master's certificate in that, which I had to get so I could become a mediator.
Family law mediator. But we left kind of those worlds and went into together to help, especially women, but men too, who have been in narcissistic abusive relationships. And so that's been our focus for the last few years.
In many cases, helping them get out of those relationships, because that's usually the best resolution.
And how to reclaim their self-empowerment as they grow and develop and go through life.
Very important and a much needed service. And thank goodness we've got you two there to support those in toxic relationships and who have to deal with narcissistic behavior, because obviously it takes a lot of courage and you need the support, the right support, in order to work through it and make a healthy decision.
One of the things we had as well, that we've done for a couple of years, is a support group that we established, letting a variety of women who can enter this and get the encouragement of others who are in the battle as well, because I think that's one of the greatest ways you can understand where you are, is to be with others that are in the same place.
100%. And I think this is the benefit of a membership. It brings like-minded people together. So just to hear your insights around the benefits of having a support group. Why would one choose to be part of a support group? And what have you noticed in terms of the transformation that your particular clients have had being in your support group?
Well, I think we started it when we realized that we had so many clients coming to us presenting with the same underlying thing, low self-esteem. They've been gaslit, which we can talk about gaslighting in a little bit. They think that they're crazy.
Yeah, they often start with that. Am I crazy or?
Yes.
So we decided, rather than be the ones to say, no, you're not crazy, to have other women who are also in like-minded, like-hearted situations be able to validate again and confirm the behaviors and offer their own fresh experiences of what just occurred in their relationships.
Many of them are in different stages too.
Right.
And it was that some were very early on, like many people joining. Some were well through the process. Some had already been long since out, but dealing with the ongoing often aftermath if you have children together and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just coming from, us who specialize in this topic. It was coming from other women who had pretty fresh and raw experiences that were very similar to what they had. So that was very eye-opening for them.
Yeah. So how long would they tend to stay in your support group on average?
Well over a year. I mean, some of them well over a year, and some graduated, sort of, to use air quotes, they graduated and moved on. They have healthier relationships now with other men, and that they are in a really good place. And so, I mean, that's the most gratifying result for us, is to be able to see someone who has moved on, has reclaimed her empowerment, and will come back lovingly to the group and say, yes, push through that fear. You can do it.
And that's one of the things that early on when we're talking to them about this, and they're thinking about leaving and having consider starting all over again. And we have to always keep encouraging them. And we'll say things like, believe it or not, I know you can't see that right now. It doesn't seem at least feasible that you could be in a loving, caring relationship, but you can get there. And when they do, it's the most marvelous thing to see, have them come back to us and say, oh my gosh, I've met this wonderful guy. It's great. It's like, so yeah, we told you could do it. So,
well, and especially for your industry where you have, luxury yachting industry, is that, I imagine that a lot of the trepidation and the fear, reluctance to leave that world if they are having that experience of a narcissistic relationship with a coworker or a supervisor or somebody above them, a lot of that time they can't see their way out because they see money and their job and their identity is wrapped up in their work, and it's very hard to extract yourself. So and that isolation will creep in too, and that's very real, the isolation, for sure.
Yeah, okay. So as you've mentioned, with our luxury yachting industry, there are a number of narcissists out there, and very difficult when the narcissist is sitting at the top of the hierarchy as well, because you feel like you're under their thumb. What I've done is a poll and a question in my Instagram story at the Crew Coach, and there have been a lot of questions and that they would love to ask you as professionals and experts in the area. So if you don't mind, I'm going to put them forward to you, and it'd be fantastic because it's so relevant and it's speaking to the crew members specifically and their needs, if I can read these questions out to you. Okay. So the first one is, what is the best way to defeat a narcissist?
Well, I guess right off the bat, we would want to do some wordsmithing right off the bat here. Is that concept of defeating a narcissist. I don't think you're ever going there. They're all about winning. I mean, that's that they never want to be in a position where they're feeling like they've lost anything. So you're never going to accomplish that feat of defeating them. The whole idea is to learn how to work with them in some way, shape, or form, and learn what they really need. And often you can do things to make them believe that they've won in some way. And that will give you what you need by just making them feel like they've won. Because trying to make them feel like they've lost is a losing proposition for you in that environment.
The narcissists like three things. They like power control. That's like a hyphen, power control. They like to win, and they usually like money. And so those three things are highly motivational for a narcissist. And so that's why Jeff was saying, don't use the word defeat, because it will defeat your purpose to begin with. So we would change that word up as like, instead of how to defeat a narcissist,
maneuver around it.
How can you have a detached relationship with this person and still maintain your own power without letting it get sabotaged or hijacked by a narcissist would be a better way to say that. How can you retain your own self and your own identity without getting it, absorbed by the narcissist? That would be it. So yes, they are masters at manipulation. They are masterful at winning. They're very good. They're usually very charming for others. And so when you're alone with the narcissist, you see a very different side of this person than the public persona that
they're great at putting on a show.
Yeah. And the word defeat's interesting because I would assume that the victim would feel defeated because they feel that they can never win.
Sure.
So in terms of the narcissist, and I had this conversation with someone yesterday, do they intentionally almost plot how they're going to set someone up? Or, how does it work? Because what I heard yesterday, this female was in a relationship with a narcissist, and she's scratching her head. As we've spoken about before, you think that you're crazy and maybe I'm being too harsh on this person because he's had childhood trauma. So is it the childhood trauma, or is it a personality trait that is almost defected?
Well, usually it comes from a very deep childhood. It does come from childhood.
We say yes and yes to those.
It's a great self-loathing that they have. So it seems counterintuitive that the narcissist, who is very arrogant and pompous oftentimes and can be very controlling, actually has very little self-esteem and self-loathing. And that is a very well-kept secret that they keep hidden in their interior vault, their figurative vault, so to speak. And no one can know that. that vulnerability that they have. So being vulnerable, being open, being transparent is not something that is in their playbook. And usually the people that they attract, whether male or female, are big-hearted. They're usually vulnerable. They're very kind. They're very sweet. And so
they get easily lured in.
And they get preyed upon for their vulnerabilities. So it's that conquering mentality. But what happens with these sweet people, whether male or female, because there are female narcissists for sure, is that they get sucked in because they're kind and they go, well, you know what? I can fix them. I can help. I'm a nurturer. And so they realize way too late that there's this bottomless pit that they're trying to
They can't ever fill it.
And it just, it's like quicksand running through. They can't fill it.
Gosh.
And so the person that you're talking to yesterday about that, so the gaslighting that occurs is a very slow drip, and it's psychological manipulation of one person over another person that causes the victim to question their own thoughts. And they're like, maybe I read that behavior wrong. Maybe that event that took place or this situation or this conflict that we had. Yeah, he's right. Yeah, I totally overreacted, or I'm too sensitive, and so they continually start to second guess themselves and doubt their own perceptions of how things happen.
Oops.
Become for the relationship, and there's only one-sided.
Okay, so do you believe that there's some narcissists who are ignorant to the fact that they are narcissists?
Yes, and they will. They
would never acknowledge it.
Yeah, they usually turn the tables and they say, "No, you're the narcissist," and no, they won't acknowledge it. That's why I know when we've done mediation with people, we've guided them in pre-mediation that we don't use that word in court with your lawyer, with a judge, with anything, because it is a trigger word. So we just don't use it to define people.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. Very helpful. I'm going to move on to the next question. What's the best way to get one over on a narcissist and teach them a lesson they deserve?
Again, the words are...
I think we've kind of answered that one already.
Okay.
You don't want to pull one over.
Yeah.
What you want to do is you don't enter the conflict, but you do want to use very clever strategies there's something that somebody created a couple of, 2 decades ago called gray rock. Mm-hmm. And if you can imagine a beach filled with lots and lots and lots of gray rocks, right? And then you'll say, well, I want that gray rock, but there's so many you can't tell which one's which, and they become benign and almost inconsequential, right? And so that is the kind of behavior that you want you want to be that gray rock where you are detached, you are boring, you are dull, because the narcissist likes that. So
they want the fight. They want you to be swinging, trying to beat them. Yeah, that's what they would.
The entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
So the next one, I don't know if it's also similar. How can you get through to the victim who has been brainwashed by the narcissist? I guess maybe that's someone.
Well, that's different.
That's very different. And that's an actual doable thing. This is again what our overall efforts have been with the support group that we've had with these folks, is to guide them through that process to help them understand what got them there. And in fact, often we'd have things like they might be explaining a scenario, and they might start with, well, I know this is my fault. And it's like we'd go, whoa, stop right there. Probably isn't your fault. That's the whole mentality of that gaslit person. They absolutely assume that I did something to cause this. I was the instigator of this problem, because that's what they're told all the time.
And I would imagine their self-esteem and self-worth has been reduced. And
it's gone.
Yeah. And then by having a support group where, I think that's the benefit of a support group, where people are at different stages and they have been through that. And then you've got a more powerful voice where you have a number of people saying, no, you need to talk. That is incorrect. Yeah.
And we do it on Zoom. We have members all over the US and the world. Actually, we have somebody in Spain too. And they will be nodding or shaking their heads. And so when you see that with this group, you look around and they are very like, wait, what? And so what happens with once somebody is gaslit for an extended period of time, what happens is they start to gaslight themselves.
Right.
And other family members and friends will also gaslight. And that it's a horrific thing. They don't mean to, but they do. So they'll say like, wow, let's use your yachting example. Like, wow, you have this great job. You're doing well. And, that's just the way that all captains are. Or that's just the...
What did you do to upset him?
Or you must have done something that made him angry, or that got you demoted, or that did something. Because when I talk to him, he's perfectly friendly to me. And so this is the gaslighting that happens externally that really undermine the victim's self-worth.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So what is the most common red flags to determine a narcissist? So we're looking at characteristics here.
You want to take a shot first?
The first would be if somebody is perhaps, if they're in a relationship, when was the last time they were out of a relationship? Are they rebounding? Are they vulnerable? Are they an easy target for a narcissist? Someone who's charming, who will lavish praise and gifts and things on them initially to woo them.
And often inflate their actual story. I mean, they'll say all kinds of grandiose things about themselves that in many cases aren't anywhere close to being true. So,
but they also do that to the victim.
Right.
And they also build that person up to absolutely adore them. And so they can't do anything but except fall in love. Or if it's in your industry where they're working for someone, they will be elevated to high praise immediately. And then what happens slowly, the narcissist in a relationship for certain will start to isolate and pull that person away from any other supporting people that are in his or her network and draw them out, restrict them from seeing them, and then only become codependent on him or her.
It's things like, why do you want to go out with your friends? Like, come on, let's have a nice night together now. You don't need to be with them or family.
They might start denigrating the family or a best friend will say things, and it will be very subtle. Usually at first, it'll be things like, yeah, I don't really think your friend Marcia has your best interest at heart. So it's not really that, but I'm here for you. Mm-hmm. So they will put any trust or loyalty that you had with other people, and they will dismantle that.
Okay. What about from a colleague's perspective? So you're working with a narcissist. What do you see?
Is this an equal coworker or is it somebody superior?
I would say a superior normally. Yeah.
So that person, I don't know if there's therapy for that person to have access to, but confronting them is not something that is usually going to be productive for the person, for the victim.
Okay.
And so I would try and get other support networks of people that understand that, so that they're not gaslit again and said, well, just try harder, because that's what happens usually, is that they go, oh, I'll just try harder. I'm going to be on time. I'm not going to do anything wrong. But there will always be something that pulls you away. And then it's ultimately, if you don't have support with, I don't know if there's an HR, human resources access for this person. If they filed a complaint, there is bound to be backlash for that, right? People are afraid to file a complaint.
Sure.
And they don't trust the people who they make the report to.
Right.
And so, what is your self-worth and your identity worth? Do you leave that job? Do you try and find something else?
That's what we
do. Often they're getting a solution. Like, people are in these relationships and they might come to us initially and talk about counseling in regards to working with this. And as they start explaining the dynamic, and often The narcissist doesn't take part in the counseling. Don't think that there's anything wrong with them.
Is it your problem?
It's your problem. And so after a while, we start hearing the stories, and it's like, well, you're going to find that there isn't much you're going to be able to do to correct this scenario. And they've probably often tried these things, and things come of it. And the same thing will probably hold true with working with this narcissist. Often extricating yourself from the scenario is the only good solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So now this is a really good question. Why do I keep attracting narcissist partners? And I know you described the personality of the victim, very compassionate, empathetic, wants to rescue them, wants to save them. So this particular individual who sent this has actually been in 2 long-term relationships with a narcissist back to back, I think about 4 and 5 years. What do you have to say about that?
Well, chances are, is this female? Chances are she may have had a childhood growing up with somebody in the family unit that had narcissistic behaviors or tendencies. Could be a father, could be a mother, could be both. Could have abandonment issues from childhood, could have emotional detachment from childhood. And so when they initially attract those narcissistic men who are charming and clever and adoring, it feels good. It's like, wow, I never had enough of this growing up. I didn't have this growing up. And so oftentimes they will be attracted to that splashy, attention that they did not.
And when it isn't satisfied with the relationship they're in and it ends and they move on, they often need to try once again to fill that void, that gap in their life, and just repeat the same dance. It requires some counseling, some therapy also to look into themselves as to why am I doing this? What in my background is driving me?
And some journaling, some meditation, some therapy. Those are some really good alternative, healthy avenues to explore before getting into another relationship.
And on the polar end, they might not necessarily be in a family unit where there is a narcissist. It could be the belief system that their primary caregivers are imparting. For example, from a religious perspective, we are people that forgive. We are people that need to be compassionate and kind to all human beings.
Yes.
Things like that. And then you feel guilty or bad when you're sensing the red flags, but you're like, I need to be kind. I need to be compassionate.
Sure.
That's the right thing to do.
Perfect.
And again, that soft-hearted, vulnerable type of person falls into that category very quickly and very easily because they're like, oh, no, I need to be caring about this. That's why the narcissist often smells and sniffs that kind of personality up because they know they can manipulate it.
Fantastic. Okay.
And just for the sake of that, oftentimes the narcissist is not aware that, like your question earlier was, are they aware that they're a narcissist? A lot of times they don't allow themselves to go there, to even imagine that they're manipulated. They don't think they're manipulative.
Which is so odd because it sounds so obvious to us that it's manipulative behavior. An example that was shared was, so this particular individual moved out of their shared house and he has set the alarm and changed the code. Then when she had to go back to pick up something, like just after they'd broken up, the alarm obviously went off and he's in a different country. So the time zone in which the alarm got triggered and he got notified was early hours of the morning, but now it's her fault.
Right. Is always blaming is that and really
always the case.
It's just a matter of helping the victim to detach from the blame, not to take it personally, to expect it, to predict that you will be blamed for that, but don't buy into it. And then just really be around people that understand and love you and can support you, because you do need that support.
In our support group, many different times, Karine, we would have the folks go through this exercise where we would kind of teach them to expect it. If they would be trying to make something good happen. It's like, well, as much as you're going to try to expect the contrary to happen, if you expect it, then you're not caught off guard, because usually you're saying, well, I can make this work. I can do something good with this. And then when they get defeated in that process, it's very disheartening. if they expect to be getting a bad behavior right off the bat, it's not surprising and that they are prepared for that accordingly.
Yeah. But with that example, what surprises me, I just see this person like going, oh, how can I set this victim up? And for them to not be aware of their behavior and what they're doing seems so odd.
Maybe they are in a subconscious level or even a conscious level. Maybe they are aware, but we've certainly encountered many who don't think that. You know, they totally repress that. They block that. There's that section in their brain where they will not allow themselves to.
And they will
believe
bold-faced lie about their behaviors and the things that they've done. When caught red-handed, they'll just nope, didn't do that. Nope, that's not, you're mistaken about that.
So hard
It's
to get
often
through.
change the reality of a story of a conflict that took place. They will rewrite it. And so that when they revisit that topic, the events as they transpired have all been changed.
And they'll very aggressively defend that position.
And so the victim is like, well, that's
I
not
thought
how
that.
I did.
I could swear it happened like that. I know it did.
I know I didn't say that. And
No, it didn't.
Oh yeah, you said this. And
Yeah.
And so that is one of the main things that we do for our clients is that when they are trying to extricate themselves from that they document everything and communicate if they have to as much as they can in text or email or without using, verbal, because it's usually going to be twisted and contorted.
Right.
Yeah.
And also one person's word against the other and ever gets to try to be resolved.
Yeah. Okay. I know it's super late for you guys, but I'm just going to ask you two more questions. Two more final questions. How to live and work with them if they are attacking one crew member in particular. So they've got a target.
And is it the target speaking or is it somebody
Witnessing.
Witnessing? And so a third person is going to intervene and say
Or
something.
wants to intervene or
Yeah, probably wants to help the person that's getting attacked, but maybe doesn't know where to start.
And a lot of times the victim that's getting attacked won't want to talk about it.
won't accept any kind of help.
Because they have been gaslit to only depend on the attacker.
Okay.
And so what you can do is say, I'm here for you. I mean, some people have gone so far as having an intervention and say, I need to pull you away from this situation because you're completely blindsided by it. They've been psychologically manipulated, so they don't.
And if multiple people are a part of that, if it's just one person, it usually doesn't work. Often multiple people can reinforce that's what they're all witnessing. A much better chance of getting them to be shaken out of malaise that they're in.
Yeah.
It takes months probably to get rid of the gaslighting that's happened, depending on how long they've been in that situation.
Yeah.
And we always say when you're trying to approach these kind of conversations too, you always have to put your worst fear forward. And like I said, if you're talking to this friend who's in this scenario, you say something along the lines of, I'm not sure if I'm going to say this right. It's very hard because I want so much to help, but I don't think I'm going to say this very well. And so it often sets up the dynamic where they can be hopefully somewhat more receptive because they know you're struggling to get the right message across to them.
Yeah. Okay, so with regards to the yachting industry, you live and work in very confined environments.
Or
When you work land-based, you can go home at the end of the day, be with your loved ones and kind of switch off, but you have a little bit of physical space away from the narcissist.
Sure.
When you've got a narcissist on board, how do you live with them? And I know we've covered this in the beginning of the conversation, but would you suggest ignoring them, keeping conversations short? What would be your go-to tips?
this is kind of going back to this gray rock concept that we were mentioning. It's often don't give them the, imagine like a ping pong, don't hit the ball back to them. So it's something you have to just try to absorb and not take in because they want the interchange. They want the battle. That's what fuels them.
What you do is you start to master the art of detachment, and you yourself will be that way. You don't have a cat, do you?
Me, personally?
No.
Not a cat, no.
No. So The thing about cats, if you ever, like, we have a cat and he's definitely a narcissist. We wrote a little blog about him. But when we lived in Florida, he would always go out on the screen inland and chase the chameleons, the little lizards. They would run around. And so he would get half of them, bite the tail, and it was a mess. But anyway, he would love it when the chameleon would run around and do things, and he would pounce on it and grab it. But the chameleons are very clever because they have this art of playing dead, right? So play dead, and then the cat gets bored and walks away and doesn't.
That's no fun. He's not doing anything.
And then, sure enough, the chameleon with half a tail will run off and escape outside under the screen in lanai. And so, just observing that cat behavior of, this narcissistic cat, but is totally disinterested when the chameleon isn't playing. He's not playing along.
It's running for its life and fighting. That's fun. They get to swat at it and have a great time.
But it's so, I guess I would say don't enter the conflict of arena. Don't enter the conflict arena, but be very, have this shield of armor around you, kind of, that you discuss and talk with them. I don't know if they have a personal relationship as well with their superior, or if it's just a professional one.
I would say it would be more so professional.
Okay. So if that's the case, I think it would be really hard if they had a personal relationship as well with the superior. That would be tough too. But I think I would just try and be around as many people as possible and blend in, be that chameleon that changes its shape and be as gray rock as you can.
Again, back to your first question, you don't defeat that. You don't defeat the narcissist to try to figure out how to work within it and work around it.
Fascinating.
And not be emotive and reactive to anything, that your responses are just completely bland, flat affect. Don't raise your intonation in your voice.
These are all the things we
Just
teach in our support group. We teach these ladies that fine art of detaching and being not engaging and not getting into.
Don't get hooked. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Gosh,
And
thank
they
you.
will try and, poke the bear and try and stir things up. But if you can maintain that resolve, that's a wonderful practice for anything, for anyone, to be able to maintain your composure without letting someone get under your skin, without letting somebody, and there may be, verbal criticism that comes in her face in front of other people, which would be humiliating. But if they can keep their resolve, I would journal, I would talk with a healthy support group, I would, try and get as much self-care as I could to keep her own empowerment intact.
Thank you both so much for sharing your personal wisdom with us. Very valuable. Now, I hear you talk about blogs and support group and resources. So do you have a website, or where can people access that information to learn more?
So it's just poppyandjeff.com, poppyandgeoff.com.
Which won't be too unfamiliar to people in the Australia world, if that's
the spelling of Jeff.
Australian and British spelling.
Yes.
So you can find us there. And we've taken a little break from our podcasting and our blog. We'll probably get back in.
Okay, so what was the name of your podcast, so that if the listeners want to go back?
They can probably find some previous ones. It's called The Relationship Restaurant.
Okay.
And it's on Apple and Spotify.
There were like 85 of them, I believe, we left off.
That's pretty good going. That's enough.
There's a few on Narcissist.
Oh, lots of them on narcissism. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm sure they'd appreciate that. Well, thank you both so much for your time yet again. And
Great to be with you. We always enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. If you have any questions with regards to narcissism, or you feel like you are involved in a narcissistic relationship, please get in touch. You're welcome to book a discovery call with me. Just email me at Karine@thecrewcoach.com, or you can find me on social media on Instagram and Facebook, and we can have a 20-minute discovery call to support you and find you the best direction moving forward. Take care. Bye.